So I'm going to talk about Knockout. I'm primarily a front-end developer, so I decided to do something that's kind of in the realm of front-end development, especially because I'm also new to Ruby. So I'm approaching this as a beginner with what you would need to know to start working with Knockout, because I myself am pretty much a beginner with Knockout. I've only maybe been using it about 2.5 months, and coming from other JavaScript libraries like jQuery and whatnot. And I know earlier you mentioned Backbone. You might want, this might help like to reference what it is and where to go. So my presentation is called What, Where, How, and Why. Of course, that didn't work. Let's try that. All right, so the first thing is, what is Knockout? And the first thing to know is that Knockout's not another programming language. So you don't have to learn another language like Ruby or like JavaScript or like PHP to use Knockout. Knockout is much like Rails is a framework for Ruby. Knockout is a framework, if you will, for JavaScript. It's a little bit of a misnomer, but that's kind of exactly what it is. Well, it's not super wrong.
You understand.
Yeah. So it really helps creating a lightweight front-end framework that you can use to create web pages that are interactive. That is exactly what it is. So another great thing about it is it's not expensive or really that difficult to learn. The learning curve is pretty easy, and there's a lot of resources out there to help you with that. And at the end of the presentation, I'll talk about a couple of those. So it's neither of those. What it is, though, it's free, it's open source, which is great, as everything should be, or everything important should be. And it's definitely well documented. It has a great website, like a lot of modern, technology that's come out recently. Like earlier, the Docker presentation had the website that allows you to learn Docker on the fly. Same with Knockout. It's definitely not a resource monster. So if you're worried that you're going to add this JavaScript library and it's a whole megabyte and it's going to reduce your download speed and your manager's going to be, why is this web page loading so slowly? It's not going to do that. What it is good though is that it is small, it's minified, and it's you can get it minified or not, depending. And it's only 46K, so it's real lightweight. And perhaps the big advantage over some other libraries that you might be wanting to use for front-end, like front-end framework, is that it can even work all the way to IE6. So if you have that requirement that you need to have something that works in every browser all the way down to IE6, this will get you there. Luckily, down to like 1% users on IE7, so not as important as much. All right, so Knockout uses what's called a model view model pattern. I mean, I'm sure you guys are familiar with a lot of different design patterns. Obviously, it's just writing codes in a bunch of big blocks, and making a mess of things. But a lot of people, especially if you're a front-end person, you're kind of familiar with model view controller, which is right here. And a lot of people who do front-end stuff like me will also work in things like WordPress and Joomla. A lot of content management systems write their plugins in this type of format. So you might be kind of familiar with it. But Knockout is a little bit different. And the thing is that it has a model and a view model and a view. And what that really represents is like when you change one item here, it changes here and is represented there. When you change something here, it's represented, or it, replicates it here and is then immediately represented in there. So I'll kind of show you a little bit what that means, hopefully by the end of the presentation. Make a little more sense. So NBC. Next up. So next is, where is Knockout? This is where you'll see Knockout as far as on the actual page itself. The good thing about a model view controller is you have like separation of code concerns. So your model does all your interacting with your database, where all your user concerns are handled by the view, obviously. And this is the same thing with Knockout. You can have up at the top of your script, you can create a view model. You can set what's called an observable. And this is an array, or not an array. You can have an observable array, obviously. But this is a variable that, as you change it in the view model, it will immediately update the view. And then all you gotta do is call your view model, and then down in your actual view, you just use this HTML element called the data bind. So what data bind does is it will use a binding and then basically adapt that binding based on some type of function or variable. So for this one, it matches first name. So if any other thing in your program changed first name to like Gabriel, it would immediately update there on the front view. And that right there you saw was kind of a, sorry, let me back up, was a representation of, was a representation of like obviously the view model and the view, but really this line can be invisible because this could be one single page. It doesn't have to necessarily be 2 pages. And that's kind of the next thing that's important here. So back to bindings for a second here, I still got some time. So some of the different way Knockout works is it uses these bindings, and you'll see there's visible text, style, changes CSS, and then to go through arrays, there's for each. And if you're used to using jQuery, you're used to writing things like, if I click, do this. If I hover, do this. If I, want to delete this, do this. With bindings, the thing that makes it really lightweight and really makes your code kind of easier to read is it attaches it all in one section. So this will control the text as it changes. This will control whether that element is visible, depending on this outcome. This will control whether the style changes. So you don't necessarily have to have functions all over the place that do that. You kind of have it all right there in one spot. So why? Well, the reason is we want to create good spas with it. Or of course, single page applications. So the thing is for those of you who do front-end development, you guys know this. If you don't, it's asynchronous. So you don't have to make a change, refresh your browser by hitting submit on the form. All the old, I won't call it dinosaur stuff you used to have to do back in the day. So you make an update, it refreshes live without having to hit the server again and re-download everything. Knockout has separate code concerns, so you saw that it has the benefits of a model view controller in a model view model, so that you can kind of easily work with your code, so it's always a good thing. And you can also build really, really Ajax-heavy applications. So you can build really complex, things like, something like I want to call it, sorry. Trying to give a good example here. So imagine you're building a whole application that had many different functions, and each function, like each page did a different concern, like let's employ time sheets, and you got to put in the employee time sheets. And the next page had reports. Well, if you immediately a user inputted that info and then hit submit, you can then go to the tab of reports and immediately refresh that data without having to reload your entire website. Okay, so that's obviously a speed concern. And then it uses obviously the advantage of an underlying data model to render pages on the fly, which is kind of what I said. Okay, so with my last minute here, if you're a beginner, you want to know where do I go to learn Knockout or how to use Knockout, or if you're someone who walks into a situation and that's what they're using at your new place of work and you're going, oh my goodness, I have to use that Knockout thing, I highly recommend just going to their website. It's actually really well documented how to work with Knockout. There's tutorials, and one of the quickest things you'll want to know are how each one of the bindings work. Because there's bindings that do things like will hide a whole div. So if you have like elements you need to delete, you can use an if binding, etc. And then of course, obviously, Stack Overflow at times. And then obviously last second, we'll have some rules, some Ruby stuff for you. If you're interested in using Ruby, there's a Ruby gem out there. I have not tried it myself, but I've heard good things about it. And that's it.